happening?
That's what's happening.
They get you at your weakest
I'm
moment.
glad you.
Moment, exactly.
It must be something important.
Are we good? What's that? Well, what do we do for a few minutes? Second. Oh, he's first?
He's first.
Then
So
we'll
they
just
have
switch
to-
it.
yeah.
That's fine. All right, we're good to start, though? I want to start on time.
Yep, give me 2 seconds. You're good, Mayor.
Everyone? Good. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the City of Palm Coast City Council Special Budget Workshop this morning. It is Tuesday, May the 24th, 2022. It's 9 a.m., and we are in the community wing of City Hall. So with that, would you all please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if the clerk would call the roll, please.
Mayor Alphen?
Present.
Councilmember Danko?
Here.
Councilmember Benelli?
Present.
Councilmember Clufus?
Present.
Mayor Vice Mayor Branquinho is excused per his request at a previous meeting for extenuating circumstances.
Understood. And there's no request for virtual attendance?
Correct.
Correct, okay. So with that, we'll move right to agenda item D, which will be public participation. So let me just, we have some newcomers in the audience today, so welcome. And let me just go through our customs and procedures for public participation. Public participation shall be held in accordance with Section 286.0114 Florida statutes and pursuant to the City Council's meeting policies and procedures. Each speaker shall at the podium provide their name and speak for up to 3 minutes. The public may provide comments to the City Council relative to matters not on the agenda at the times indicated in this agenda. Following any comments from the public, there may be discussion by City Council. When addressing the City Council on specific enumerated agenda items, speakers shall direct all comments to the mayor. Make their comments concise and to the point, not speak more than once on the same subject, and not by speech or otherwise delay or interrupt the proceedings or the peace of the City Council. Obey the orders of the mayor or the City Council, and not make any irrelevant, impertinent, or slanderous comments while addressing the City Council, which pursuant to council rules shall be considered disorderly. Any person who becomes disorderly or who fails to confine his or her comments to the identified subject or business shall be cautioned by the mayor and thereafter must conclude his or her remarks on the subject within the remaining designated time limit. Any speaker failing to comply as cautioned shall be barred from making any additional comments during the meeting and may be removed as necessary for the remainder of the meeting. Members of the public may make comments during the public comment portion of the meeting. Please be advised that public comment will only be permitted during the public comment portions of the agenda at the times indicated by the chair during the meeting. And let me just add to that, following public comment, today is a workshop. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to explain the City Council's objectives for having workshops every month. The council meets in workshops to be well informed of each item to be brought before the city council and to make the best determination on behalf of all city residents. City staff presents detailed information during the workshops and provides a summary background for each item, as well as any additional documents relative to the item. The City Council can then have a meaningful, collaborative, healthy discussion on each item presented. This way, facts and knowledge can be obtained prior to the next business meeting, where City Council then makes the best determination in the interest of the citizens' health, safety, and welfare on each item. As we continuously grow as a collaborative council and follow all council meeting policies and procedures, I will always do my best to make sure that every city council member has an opportunity to bring forth individual opinions. Our constituents are expecting council to communicate cohesively and with civility to serve our community. The workshops are a valuable tool to present and discuss our individual opinions on behalf of all residents and achieve these objectives. We may not agree with each other, but that is one advantage of the workshops, to evaluate all the information necessary in advance of a decision, a motion, and a vote. I hope that we will all understand the purpose of these workshops, and I invite all opinions at all times on the dais. And with that, I would open up the meeting for public participation. If any member of the public would like to address City Council at this time, please feel free to come up to the podium. Please.
I didn't think I'd be number one. This is my first time at a city council
And just,
meeting,
if you would,
but,
just give us your name, just so we can apply that to the record.
Okay. My name is Kathy Fining, and I live at 74 Cimarron. And Mr. Mayor, I understand that you were in front of my house a couple of weeks ago. There was a question about Cimarron Drive and pedestrian safety, which I think is going to be addressed in the budget. Now, you were there for quite a while, Mr. Mayor, and I do think during that time, you probably didn't see any pedestrians. Well, the reason for that is that that is not a pedestrian walkway. It is a very busy street, and the fact that some folks are considering putting a sidewalk on Cimarron was not designed for that. There's not room for that. Now, I don't know if this is standard or not, but I've brought a picture of my driveway. It's paved driveway. It cost hundreds and hundreds of dollars to put that in. We would not like to have the bottom portion of that busted up so that people can put a sidewalk there. My neighbors on either side have circular driveways, beautiful circular driveways, and they don't want that either. Now, the folks who do want to go for a walk in that neighborhood, use the side streets. There are plenty of side streets. Cochise, Cedarford, whatever. That's where they go. So, no, we don't think that money spent on a sidewalk on Cimarron Drive is in the best interests of anyone. Bikers, do what the rest of us do. Put your bike on the bike rack and go to the one of the many beautiful parks, trails. There's so many around here, and they're designed for that. A bike, would you put a bike on a sidewalk? I don't think that's the answer either. However, I do have a suggestion. What is the main problem there is speeding. The sheriffs have not given out many tickets. They've given warnings, and that's like blowing in the wind. At the crosswalks, put those nice pavers to slow down the traffic. That's what we need. My mailbox was just hit again yesterday. The 5th time in 3 years. Slow the traffic down. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Are there any other speakers that would like to address City Council at this time?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kathy Hyder. I would like to address City Council on an issue that's been pretty much plaguing me for a while. I have spoken up on it. I think I met with you once, Mr. Mayor, on it, regarding debris that is being left in front of houses, and then having to reach out to code enforcement and get no action. When I moved here in 2005 from New York, I thought that this was the most beautiful city that I had ever seen. And I thought it was the cleanest city. And now here I am almost 17 years later, and I'm beginning to feel like we are letting our city down by allowing debris to pile up in our neighborhoods, around people's houses, in front of people's houses, and very visible to the public. I know that the laws were changed in Tallahassee regarding this, but I feel that we need to do something about it. And then if we call and complain about it, we have to give our name, our address. To me, that puts me in jeopardy as a citizen here in Palm Coast. I don't feel comfortable with it, even though I have done it, and still nothing has really been done about it. The second thing is our senior housing. My sister actually lives in Palm Coast Landing, moved in there when it first opened. My sister's on a very limited income. And as a senior citizen, her rent, her expenses continue to go up and up and up. So therefore, I feel that there's a need for something to be done about more affordable senior housing for our citizens in the community. I think that these two items are very important, and we need to act on them. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment. Any other members of the public like to comment at this time? Seeing none, I will close the public comment section of the agenda, and we will move forward. And if I may, I'm going to, with everyone's consensus here, I'm just going to change the order of the presentations and introduce the Honorable Tax Collector, Ms. Suzanne Johnston, to the podium, who will give us a presentation regarding tax collection in Flagler and the city of Palm Coast. Good morning, Ms. Johnston.
Morning. Good morning. My name is Suzanne Johnston, Flagler County Tax Collector, and I have two people with me here today. I have Ray Nessio, and Ray is the money lady in the office, so any checks or things you get from us, she keeps track of every bit of that and balances it to the penny, which is what you expect. I also have Renee Flint. Renee wears many hats in this office, and if she would handle the PowerPoint clicker for me. First, I wanted to say I appreciate y'all having us come today. Y'all have never had us come and speak at one of your budget meetings, and I was asked to give hints, tips, history, this type of thing. So for the tax bills, back in the 1960s, the cities, that would be y'all, would have taken your own homestead applications, assessed the property yourself, and mailed your own tax bills. Now, aren't you glad you don't have to do that? It is a lot of work. And in the deal that the state made with the cities to give this up, you do not have to pay for the collection or assessments of your taxes. And all of this was done on the state level because of the school required local effort in order to keep taxes in each county for the school levied at that same level of assessment. So like the county has to pay for the school board collection. So they pay our office $2.685 million for this. All the city has to pay is your pro rata share of the postage. So you get all of this stuff done for you for $3,910 a year. So I'm almost free to y'all, so you get that. The 2020 tax roll is the last full tax roll that we've done. We're still in the process of finishing up the 2021. And so that's the roll that I'll be referencing in this. So we collect, 197 million and something dollars totally for all of the taxing authorities and the special assessments. Of that, your operating money is a little over $26 million. So then, the PowerPoint we've got, the first thing is the extension of roll before the value adjustments boards. And in the beginning of October, the first Monday in October, I go before the Board of Commissioners and ask them to direct the property appraiser to extend the tax roll before the value adjustment board is complete. If I don't do that, there is no way you're going to get any money in the month of November. So it's very important I do that. And the law says if the only reason can be the value adjustment board, any other reason I'm not able to do that. So in 2004, look at what the collections were in November, 16.9%. We could not have the tax roll extended before the value adjustment board. There was a taxpayer in the city of Beverly Beach filed a value petition, and the amount he was wanting his value reduced was 7% of the city of Beverly Beach value. So there was no way we could do this. So it totally shifted the collections into December, getting that money. The taxpayers get 4% discount for the first 30 days. So it totally shifted it. So hopefully if this happens again, you will have some money sitting there in reserves to operate. Because if you have to start borrowing money to operate, that costs a lot. So you'll see, and we'll let you know if something like this is happening, that you're not able to do that. Right after the Board of County Commissioners meets and says, okay, go ahead and extend the tax roll, you receive from the property appraiser the certification of final taxable value. That is going to give you those latest values, and your budget is based on your July 1 value you get. This final taxable value is what I have to use. This is the certified tax roll value. And if there's a 1% variation, then you're able to administratively change your millage rate. Pay attention. If you're on vacation, that's not an excuse to miss that 3 days that you have to take care of this. And so you think, all right, y'all had this in 2020 tax roll. It was 0.13 of 1%. So that was just a dab, and it went down, and it amounted to like $35,000 is all that amounted to. But had it been 1%, that would have been $273,000. So you're talking losing $250,000 simply because somebody's on vacation, somebody's in the hospital, or it sat laying on a desk without being signed and sent back. And if it was just barely below that 1%, you could end up taking a big hit to affect your budget. Now, it can go the other way too. The value could increase, which is just pure extra money. But all of these processes you have in that trim process is very time sensitive. Back in the 70s, the city of Beverly Beach, they did not send in their millage certification. And it has to be within a certain number of days of a public hearing. The person was on vacation. A council member, just like one of y'all, had to break in his house, get the form, and get it to us. Otherwise, it would have been the rollback rate, and the city of Beverly Beach had to levy a certain amount of money in order to keep the revenue sharing funds. So those timings of things make a difference. Of course, back then there was no email, there was no cell phones to reach anybody. So that was, that could have been a real problem for Beverly Beach just because the guy was on vacation. So on the trim compliance, don't add words to anything. Don't ad lib anything. If your city manager, your city attorney say exactly these words, you best say exactly those words. The public hearing or the public advertisements that you have to do must read a certain way. And you think, okay, how's the Department of Revenue know? Are they really serious? Yes, they are serious. In fact, in 2016, there were 33 taxing authorities in the state that were in non-compliance. The city of Marineland being one of those. We received a letter from the Department of Revenue that said they were not in compliance and we could not distribute any money over the rollback rate. Once they corrected it, and I don't know if it was the public hearing was wrong or the legal advertisement was wrong, but once that was fixed, then we could reduce that. We could distribute that money to them. Just like the public hearings must be held after 5 o'clock. So 5:01 is what's very, very important. And as the new people come in, the old ones go that know this type of thing, and you think 5:01, that must have been a typo. Nope. If you change it, you'll be not getting all of your money until those advertisements are fixed. And that was in 2016. So the law says that you can budget not less than 95% of that levy, of your levy. And so the reasons for this: discounts, errors and insolvencies, the variance between your July 1st certification and the final certification. And then there's money collected after the fact. If somebody's in bankruptcy, once the claim of liens are filed, the bankruptcy trustee sends us the money or authorizes us to receive the money. Deferred taxes, which if you're old, poor, and certain levels of assessment and mortgage and things, those taxes are not collected until the ownership changes. You've got county-held tax certificates, which did not sell, and until somebody buys them, you don't get that money. The personal property taxes have to go through a court process, and the judge ratifies these tax warrants, so that's done after this, and any homestead liens. So the city uses 96.5% variance, and so you can take the 5% off. The city's taking 3.5% off. Helena tells me y'all got other funds there to help make any difference. But look at how much the discounts alone make up 3.6%. And y'all are only using a 3.5%. So those discounts, you don't get the money. That is savings to the taxpayers for paying early. Errors and insolvencies for y'all on the 2020 tax roll was $16,000. The pending bankruptcy was $979. Deferred taxes, $846. $700 was tied up in county-held certificates. The personal property warrants that were pending, a little bit less than $10,000. We over-collected $46, and y'all got the money on penalties and interest. If you don't pay by the end of March, there is interest that's added, there's penalties and added, so you get this money, and then the rounding on y'all was 2 cents. So we collected $26,360,411. So that was 96.38% of your final certification, and it was 96.28% of your July 1 certification, which y'all received that on June 30th, but you have to have that by July 1st. So you think if you used 95% of your levy is what you budgeted, that would give you a bigger buffer. And I don't know how much this other account to help take care of these things, what the amount actually is. The county uses 95%. And if it was a big difference, a big decrease between your July 1 certification and the final certification, that would help take up that. If some big group files bankruptcy, You're not going to get that money for maybe a year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever. So that's just a little bit more of a buffer so that you're not short. You can't guarantee that everybody's going to pay late. If every single person paid in November, you would end up getting 96% of your money. And the faster you get the money, the less money you get because they've gotten more discounts. And you hate to say, well, I hope everybody pays late. You know, that would be bad to say that, but you'd get more money that way. But if the mortgages have to be paid, or the escrow accounts, in November, so the more mortgages there are with escrowed taxes, it's going to be increasing. Discounts will increase. So if you had used a 95%, if you had budgeted 95% of your levy, you would be sitting there with $352,000 extra dollars. You know, so think about that and check with Helena on how much money is actually there. This gives you some figures to come up with the discounts, all of this, because the last thing you want to happen is not have enough money to fund your budget. So just keep all of that in.
Ms. Johnston, while you're going, may I ask a question now before you proceed with the presentation? May I ask you a question on this? Just before we get past this part. I and I assume my fellow council members have concerns about the economic health, the stability of our local residents, the local economy. You've been at this for a long time. The differential between the early payers and the later payers, the discount, has gone up and down over the years depending on the economic situation. Are you able to comment on what we're looking at going forward? Would you expect more people to be paying later and therefore the discount to be smaller based on what you see happening in our national economy?
First, let me say, I asked the people at the counter in the office, are the residents complaining about their taxes? No. During the downturn,
May I quote you on that?
During the downturn, I had people in my office crying, tears, because they could not pay their taxes and were concerned. I haven't seen that in years. Nobody has stopped me and said taxes are sky high. But you think about it, the more mortgages there are, and a lot of people refinance, and if the banks are insisting on their taxes being escrowed, they're just paying that really 12 times a year, and that raises up the discounts. The tax certificate sale for the past several years, which is the people that have not paid their taxes by June 1st, that runs about $3 million countywide. I don't have that separated for the city. But I think it is very good news that the residents are not complaining. It was awful when they were in tears in my office, and I remember I had one man in there and he said, "Look, Suzanne, I cannot pay this amount of money every month." And I said, what do you mean every month? He said, well, it says I have to pay $3,000 in November. I have to pay $3,100 in December. He was thrilled to death when he knew you've paid one amount, not every single month. I had another woman that could not pay her taxes. She was not able to even pay her mortgage during the downturn. And it's a heartbreaking situation when this happens. And I mean, they can come in and they can cry. Taxes are not voluntary. And if you can't pay your taxes and a tax certificate is sold, you've really got 2 years before your property can be brought to sale by the clerk of court. And that's an auction type thing. So that 2-year buffer ends up helping. Even the bankruptcies, we're not seeing a big increase in bankruptcies. So it seems like the economics of the residents is just, it's just fine.
Okay, thank you.
So then the distributions that we've got, the law says that we distribute taxes 4 times within the first 2 months, and then once a month thereafter. You've got tax collectors in the state that will write 4 checks December 31st and distribute the taxes then, and that's perfectly legal. My thought is the sooner you get the money, the sooner you can pay your bills, get some discounts on early payments, not have as much interest on some loans, this type of thing. So we used to fix it to where we were distributing based on school board's first big payroll. And it meant they didn't have to borrow the money in order to make that big payroll. Borrowing money is expensive. That's expensive. And so the quicker we can get this money to you, much, much better than it actually is. For the top taxpayers in the city of Palm Coast, Florida Power and Light is #1. And they're also #1 in the county. And one thing you would need to watch, if any of these big people ever file bankruptcy, that could end up putting you in a bind. Is $47,000 going to make a difference? No, I would like to think you're not cutting your budget that close to anything. But you look at Florida Power and Light, should something happen with them, a $500,000 hit on your budget is going to make a big difference. And Renee handles the bankruptcy in the office, and so should something like this come about, we're going to let you know and at least give you a heads up on all of that.
I'm sorry, if we could just go back to that slide just for a minute. I'm looking at the names of the top 10 taxpayers, and I just want to call out the fact that some number of those are, I guess, developmental entities. Are they apartment complexes? Are they multifamily developments that I see there?
All I care about is getting the money. That's my whole goal in life. Bring it on and pay the money so we can get that dispersed out.
So I appreciate that.
Appraisal.
I'm just looking at in our top 10, there seems to be a significant percentage of the top 10 that represent other than our single-family homeowners, which is I'm not sure that our community is aware of that, because if I go down, I'm looking.
Individual. And even with this, you have to take with a little bit of grain of salt because the names have to match exactly. If you've got a tax parcel that says Florida Power A&D Light, that does not match Florida Power ampersand Light. So this is the best information that is available
Okay.
to give y'all. The installments, and that's where you pay your taxes 4 times a year. First 2 are basically half of the prior year, the next 2 you're playing catch up. So when you look at June 30th, September 30th, those 2 payments are sitting there at the beginning of your fiscal year. October 1, we're sitting there with $333,000 if you get desperate. And the law reads for the distributions unless there's a way, if we mutually agree upon something. And you never know what life is going to bring. You're down, you're in the red, all of this, a big hurricane, fires, and you think, well, $300,000 would definitely get us out of the hole. Know that. And it changes every year. We've got 2,229 people or taxpayers that pay on the installment method. So keep that in mind. So when the money comes in, we get the file from the property appraiser. That has to be converted to our format. We have a delinquent tax file that must be merged, your special assessments file that has to be merged. All of this, everything has to balance to the penny, make sure everything is in the correct field, and the goal is to get it to the print vendor before Orange County does, and that's the city of Orlando. Otherwise, we are going to be late with the bills. So we typically jump the gun on this because we can always go back, load in another file, and start over. But if we're able to gather up a couple of days in there to get the work going, we end up doing that. Look at the wire money that comes in by wire, and these are typically mortgage companies. It went from $55 million in 2020 to $61.5 million in 2021. And I would think that that would be people that refinance, the banks and made them do an escrow payment. The e-checks, and we do e-checks in the office or online for free with no charge. So you're guaranteed your money got to us and wasn't lost in the mail. So this is an excellent way. It went from $16 million to $22 million. A lot of people are doing that, and it's because of COVID fixed it to where you couldn't come into the office, and it's a good, safe way. The younger the population is for the city, the more of this that you're going to see. Credit cards charge a convenience fee of 2.5%, and that's kept by the credit card company, not us. And it is went from 1.7 million to 2 million, so that's pretty much basically the same. The mail, when it comes in, the hardest mail to handle is online bill pay. And I know quite a few years ago we had 9,000 of these that came in with bill pay. Some of the people put the parcel number on there, some don't. Some people pay the right amount, some don't. Some people want to average the amount of 2 months and pay that. So we have to sit down, find out what they're trying to pay, you know, print the tax bill. This way we're able to run it on the high-speed processor. So those are a real problem. Everything runs through the high-speed processor. Then we run it and deposit it with an image. And the goal is to have today's mail, those checks in the bank today. And everything has to match to the penny. So if one machine grabs 2 checks and the other one grabs them separately, we have to sit down and manually figure it out. Why is it $1,000 difference in that? In the month of November, we typically have 600 refund checks, people just flat paying the wrong amount of money. We had about 100 this past year that added up November, December, January, February, March, and paid that full amount and mailed that in to us. They apparently don't think their taxes are high enough if they're going to do that. The money seems like it just comes in so fast. And it's one of the most important jobs in our office is getting all of that money accounted for in the bank, making sure that everything actually balances. So then the audits, believe me, everybody is checking on you. When our auditors are going to write y'all and say, okay, did Suzanne give y'all all the money you were entitled to, or did she send a check to her brother-in-law instead? When you have your audit, your auditor writes us wanting to know exactly what we sent you so they can make sure you didn't send one of those checks to your brother-in-law. Then the Department of Revenue, of course, is watching over all of us, and they are the oversight of the property taxes. Not you, not me, not the county commissioners. It's the State Department of Revenue. That's a lot of information, I know, and it's fun. It's changed a lot with computers. When I started, everything was a manual process. And at least now you can hit a button and get the answers. So that ends up working out much easier. Life is easier. It used to take 24 hours just to run a tax roll recap. Now, it's just a matter of minutes to get exactly what you need. I have an excellent staff. The Palm Coast office, I don't know if y'all have been there, and our residents bring their tax dollars into there. And that is when you have an older population, it gives them a place to go, reason to get up and get dressed and go to lunch that day. And so that works out real good, and everybody's always very, very nice to us. You'd think we'd get hollered at all the time, and we really don't. They treat us all very, very nice.
So let me say, City Council appreciates your presentation and your staff's presence here today, but and City Manager for adding both the tax collector and the property appraiser as well at the beginning of our tax cycle. But I think it's important that everyone knows, and I speak from experience, that any resident that goes to any one of your offices is greeted kindly, and every single staff member that I've ever encountered is willing to answer the question, or if they don't know, direct you to the person who does know the answer. So it's one of the, unheralded values that we have here in the city and the county, of course, and we appreciate your management of a very, very fine staff that is so helpful to the public, so we thank you for that. Are there any questions from City Council to the Honorable Ms. Johnston this morning?
I just want to thank you for coming out today, Suzanne, and I appreciate everything you do, and I've never had a bad experience in any of your offices despite having to hand over my money. It's always been a pleasant experience, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you as well. I concur with everything that Councilman Danko said. I do have one question. So I remember reading several months ago about possible increase to homestead exemptions for certain residents. Have you heard anything about that, and how would that impact us?
That's the property appraisal.
That's presentation number 2 on the way.
That's number 2.
Totally
Okay.
at the end of the whole tax process. If he doesn't say you get homestead, you're not getting it on your tax bill. There has to be a correction. Even down to the point, if your middle initial is wrong on your tax bill, we can't make a change. They have to certify this change to us. So no matter what he says to you, please know that I'm innocent. He's the one that says how much money these tax bills actually are.
Very good.
Yep. I would just like to express my gratitude for coming and explaining the whole process, and it's incredibly fascinating to hear the evolution of collecting taxes over the years, so I thank you for everything. Thanks for the hard work and your staff.
Suzanne, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Our next presentation this morning dovetails, I think, with the first, and normally the Honorable Property Appraiser would be the warm-up act for the tax collector, but we're going to do it in reverse today. And now that Ms. Johnston has warmed up the audience, Jay, would you make your presentation?
When they said community in the word, where do you think I went? I was in the parking lot for 25 minutes waiting to go inside.
But you had an audience that had no questions.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Anyway, so who do we work for? Who do I work for? Who pays my bill? I don't work for the county, nor do I work for you guys other than you're sitting here in this county. So myself, Suzanne, all the constitutionals work for the residents of our county. And you guys, fortunately, don't even have to pay my budget. So you're getting quite the deal. Just remember that. You're not paying for it. So every time you think the county's not doing anything, remember I send them a bill. And they pay most of my budget. School board doesn't pay, you guys don't pay. So it's kind of a big deal. And I know Suzanne pointed out that I'm the one with your tax bills, but you never wrote a check to me, did you? Just remember that. If you guys have your little handout there, so I'm old school, so you're not going to get a PowerPoint from me. And if the public would like a copy, there are copies over there. I don't know if we could hand them one if they would like to see what we're talking about, or any of the staff. There's a few you'll have to share. If you go to the first page, when you flip, you'll see the City of Palm Coast values. And you guys have $13.3 billion, right? Sounds really good. But then start looking at all the rest of that stuff. Agricultural is a use value. So you guys lost 47, 48, million dollars because of that. Commercial would be like your business is intangible. You lose 366 million because of that. And it goes on down. Obviously, government, y'all can figure that out. This building doesn't pay tax. So anything in the city limits that is exempted due to governmental ownership You're not getting that money. But then it starts getting bigger. Personal exemptions, homestead, senior, discounts for disability. Those things start adding up pretty good, $1.7 billion. But look at the next one, CAP. That's the differential between your homestead value, your just value, and your assessed value. That's huge, 3.8, pretty soon that'll be $4 billion you guys don't get access to. And that's making a big difference as values go up. I mean, when you see these huge increases, you guys are all saying, yeah, okay, well, this is good, we're gonna get all this money. But that 3% cap is sitting there protecting all those homesteaders from you. I mean, from the people spending the money. So the county doesn't get that money, you guys don't get that money, and this is broke down just for you. So instead of 13.3 billion, you guys are working with like 7.5 billion. Big difference. That's, you know, a huge difference, 40-something% that's lost to those exemptions, if you want to think of it that way.
And Jay, if I may, when people come to your office and say, hey, the guy across the street or person across the street, his home is assessed at some number and it's way different than mine, it's the same kind of house, that cap usually plays a big part of that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and you know, obviously taxes in the state of Florida, as you guys would all know, are personal. Each person's treated differently because of exemptions and cap. You've got one guy with homestead, senior, maybe a partial disability for, you know, veterans. One guy's got a combat related and they're over 65, so whatever their letter says, could be 65% removed at the end of the calculation. So there's various different reasons. And now with the crazy values going up and someone decided to cash out and sold their house, guess what? The poor new guy buys the house, and this guy had $100,000 in cap, times the millage rate. So he gets the first bill a couple of $1,000s more before we do anything. And of course the values go up and we reset the base value on a house every year. So the homesteaders that have been here, you notice they don't come in and complain. There's complacency because that 3% cap, you guys get a tax bill. When's the last time it changed dramatically? If you've been here for a few years, you know, you come beat me to death on the first year. What the heck? Why come? How come you're treating me like that? Is that guy next door related to you or something? But then the second year, I don't hear from them because that 3% cap, their bills are pretty much flatline. These days, your escrow payment changes more due to insurance than it does due to tax changes when you're homesteaded. And of course, that plays a big role in what you guys are getting. If you look at the second page, and I like this because it shows you guys the whole time you were a city, what was the taxable value? You know, 1.6 billion back in the beginning, and we're up to 7.5 billion now. But the county-wide number that we're working with for just value, you know, you guys are at 13.3, and the county's up to like 20.6, and that's just, which isn't really relevant to anybody because you don't get to spend based on that. But then when we look at the county's taxable value this year, they're at like 12.3 billion. If you go back in history, January 1 of 07 was our max, and we were at about 12.2 billion. So we've now eclipsed the max for the countywide. But if you look at Palm Coast, you guys you're 1.33 billion off. Go to 08 on that list, look at it. You know, or 07, 8.8 billion, but you guys are only at 7.45 billion this year. Why is that? You'd think, well, the county got it, why don't we? Where's all the homeowners live? And I just moved from Fort Lauderdale and brought $500,000 of protected value with me if my house is worth enough. So you guys are getting killed by the caps and the homesteads and stuff. I mean, kill's the wrong word, but you know, it does explain probably why you guys are maybe not at your max already. I mean, take your number and add $3 billion to it, just in cap, right? Now you're way over what you were. So, you know, a lot of changes taking place, but you can see all these changes. And if you look on the right side of that piece of paper, and this is historical values on it's about the third page of this handout, you can look at what's going on, but you guys have like $330 million in new construction. That's got to be worth, $1.4 million of free money to you guys this year. That's not counted against rollback or anything. But that sounds pretty good, but then scroll back up here to, let's see, 06. Look at the number. 625, $625 million in new construction, double, let's just say. So even though it seems like we're growing so fast we can't breathe, we're not growing like that.
So we've been here before. This is when we hear cries of growth and development. This is a cycle, and we're not in the first iteration of that cycle. We've been here before.
Yeah, back in the early 2000s,
Right.
it was crazy time.
Okay.
But now, from the public's perspective, well, maybe there's less land sitting around. I remember the first time someone built a house next door to me in Palm Cove. I felt violated. I walked out in my backyard and it wasn't the same anymore. There's no trees over there and they're building a house. So I understand people's reaction. Of course, if you own that piece of property and you sold it, it don't make you a bad guy. That's what that land in theory is for. As long as you guys are keeping hold of the steering wheel, y'all are doing what you're supposed to do. And you can also flip to the next page and take a look at, number of units added. And there's just a little graph there, but, in the peak market, which would have been right in 05, if you can tell from that, you guys added just under 4,000 new buildings. Now look at it. Nowhere near the same. You guys now are at like 1,400 and something new buildings. So what we were dealing with back in that mid-2000s was just unbelievable. And of course, when we crashed and burned, we peaked out January 1 of 07. My value's done on the beginning of the year. It's leading up to that. It had already stopped moving, but the values, had settled into that number. You see a huge change in what people were doing, and then all of a sudden everyone who was building houses, all our subcontractors, they all left. Unbelievable how bad it got. And most of you guys were here to see that. And of course, my story is I go to this little restaurant over in Marvin's Garden on State Road 100 and get a sandwich. I'd go in there and you'd sit down at the table and someone's butt's in your face. It's lines of people. And you see concrete dust on their boots and everything. Then I go in there and there's very few people in there. All those guys have left, and they also left their houses and such. So we had all the foreclosures, the short sales, David, you know that from the real estate game. It was a huge change in all our demographics, all the people left. The next time I went to that restaurant, it said closed because they couldn't survive on just me stopping by. And everything you saw happen was related to the construction industry, whether you're a realtor, a title company, whether you're working on a house, building any kind of subs in there, the builders. The builders had to get rid of their yachts and stuff, okay? They all lost everything because of the way it went. I don't see that this time because all these people are moving here, and you were kind of addressing that a little bit with Ms. Johnston. These people are moving here, they're retired, or they've come down here after selling their house up north. A lot of them are getting a mortgage this big, very small, or maybe no mortgage. And when the economy fluctuates, they don't lose their job working on a slab at a house and move away and leave their homes. So I feel better about it than what we went through before. Employment, I'm sure Ms. Johnston can tell you, it's not easy for me to find an employee right now. They're all working. So I don't fear it like I did before.
Okay.
But, seeing the changes in numbers, when you look at today compared to that peak, the numbers look different. The crazy changes and stuff. If you go to that last page, and I know Ms. Johnson mentioned rollback. So here's the way for you to understand this. You ready? PowerPoint from Mississippi, okay? So here's the property appraiser over here valuing property. And taxable is what you care about. So this year, right now, we're already up like 17% taxable. Last year, y'all were 10 for point of reference, okay? So 17%. This is you guys, all the taxing authorities. So I raised value that you get to multiply by. So according to rollback, you're gonna lower this number, but then you're gonna have to deal with, I don't know, cost of living raises, fuel cost, hiring new employees to keep up with it and all that. So, you know, you guys need to justify why you're not at rollback, and that's, you know, I as a taxpayer will appreciate that. If you spend the money on something that we need, that's a good thing. You know, why would I be mad at you for that? Because you're spending it on me, right? The county's doing the same thing, the schools. You don't really get to go yell at the school board because pretty much they're told what to do by the state. They're gonna spend a certain amount per student. But you guys are gonna come up with a budget, then you're gonna turn around and look at what I've done and say, this is the millage rate we need to fund our budget. And of course, you're gonna be a good steward of our money and spend it wisely, but you need to defend it. You don't get 17% more money because I gave you 17% more taxable value. You can, but that's a tax increase. And the last sentence here says, you know, you guys are required by law to do that. That came about in '07. The legislature got mad at all the governmental organizations out there, and I'll give you the example. When I started, we were in the old courthouse, and the commission chambers is below me. And one of the county commissioners, so I can pick on them since y'all are, you know, you're not them, so I can tell you the story, and I remember this. I raised value, say 38% taxable in 1 year, okay? The county lowered their millage rate 4%. Okay, so you know, and everybody's wondering what I did to them, but this happened, and then that went down about like that. And one of the county commissioners patted himself on the back and congratulated the other fellows because they have one of the lower millage rates in the state and they had held the line on taxes. But if you just want to do simple math, they got like 34% more money that year. That is a tax increase. Now we got to get into new construction and some other stuff that doesn't count, but just for argument's sake, it makes the point. So you want to always be thinking about that. How do we, you know, juggle spending money that we need to spend? I like using the library as an example, which y'all don't have to pay for. But if someone's talking about you guys cutting, I'll do that with the county and, you know, say, so why don't we get rid of the library? Now, someone will probably knock me down for saying that, but it makes a point. It's not health and safety. We don't have to have it. Holland Park, do you have to have it? It's not health and safety. It's not something we could live without it. Do we want to? No. We want to have this quality of life stuff, but that costs money. So what do we get to decide we pay for? You know, you guys unfortunately sit in the big seats. You have to decide that. And I'm glad that I don't have your job when you have to decide certain things.
So you didn't call out inflation specifically, so inflation is another one of the culprits in terms of trying to achieve rollback.
Absolutely, and I don't expect anyone can. I mean, my budget's up a little bit this year. Well, I'm gonna pay more for health insurance for my employees. I've got to give them COLA, and I'm not sure what that's gonna be yet. The county doesn't control me in my budgeting process. The Department of Revenue approves my budget. So you don't have the fox in the hen house kind of thing here going on. You know, I'm separate. But they do control me on the raises. There's an argument I could make that I could do whatever the state's doing. But pretty much whenever they set something for their employees, I kind of have to follow that. But everything else I do, you know, they can voice their opinion if they would like. You know, I mean, I don't answer to them. They can go to Tallahassee and challenge my budget. And each one of us, the 5 constitutionals, are different. You know, Katie, our supervisor, is actually controlled by them completely. Miss Johnston, you could argue, is not controlled by them at all because she's more of a fee-based business. And she can correct me if I say anything wrong on that. But me, I submit to the Department of Revenue and they approve my budget based on, you know, whatever I come up with. They may offer me some changes, but that's who approves my budget. The county doesn't like it, they can go and complain to the Department of Revenue. And of course, we have a good relationship, so we're not gonna have that. And this is what my budget looks like. It doesn't change much. It's changing, but it doesn't change much. So, you know, we don't really need to get out the sticks and stones in each other.
Right.
You know, I'll fare better than a lot of people because of the way my budget operates.
And I would just comment for, you know, I've used the data and information from the property appraiser's website in particular over the years. And as I compare it to other counties in the state of Florida and actually in other areas of the country, you really would be hard-pressed to find a more robust database of information that's available to every member of the public as a resident of Flagler County. So if you want to look up information about your own property or any property that resides within the county limits, that information is readily available and it's rather user-friendly. And I thank Mr. Gardner for offering that kind of information to us.
Well, everybody thinks I'm doing it to help them, but think about this. My office is not full of realtors and title companies and general questions from the public. I would probably have to hire 3 or 4 more people on my front counter if we didn't have that website. So really it benefits me from the other end. Now, do I like it when someone pats me on the back? Being a politician, you know, I love it. I mean, and I was a user before I became the property appraiser. I was a fee appraiser. So I know what people need. And the bones of that website were there when I started. They had already started working with this. It was Q Public then. Now they've merged with someone else. But the point is, we just kept adding things because of my experiences. I knew what people wanted to see, and you know, we even put listings on there. Now, right now they're not on there because I guess the MLS board is changing to new software. But we've already started the process to have it, so you can look at everything I use to get over on you. Is on my website. You can see all the sales. You can see how I'm treating your neighbors. That just value that we come up with is based upon the market. We're building this model, kind of like Zillow, except we're good at it. You know, we're boots on the ground, and we come up with a value. So, you know, if you bought your house for $1 million in regular old Palm Coast, we might say your house is worth $250,000. We don't care what you paid for it. We care what everyone pays for it. And this statistical model is used to come up with a value that's fair. I mean, that's in our, you know, our motto here is that we're going to treat you fair and equitably when we do this. And of course, I'm not the tax guy. I don't have a dog in that fight. I don't care how much money you guys get. I care what my values are, what those exemptions are. The rest of it plays out based on budget process.
Right. And just to your comment, again, and this is for every resident, your staff is very accommodating. I made the same comment to Ms. Johnson, but yours equally accommodates the public's questions. They are helpful. They will find the answer. And every single person that walks through your door is greeted in a very timely fashion. So I encourage the public to take advantage of the service that you provide for us. Any comments from City Council at this point?
I would just like to thank you for taking the time to come here and explain everything to us. And you highlighted something that is a very delicate subject, trying to talk to residents about the disparity in services provided through the city, and also the extent that there are homestead residents in Palm Coast, and how, as we continue over time, it creates an inequitable situation for the services that we're providing, with everyone still staying in their homestead homes. And I just wanted to thank you for bringing that to light. It's something I tried to spread around, but it's a little bit more difficult to talk to residents directly about that, but that's something that I appreciate, so thank you.
Councilman?
Morning, Jay. I just want to, yeah, you got it, right? Okay, I'm glad I got it back to you. I found that in a parking lot after an event. It fell off, and I returned it to him. I just want to echo the comments of our mayor, and I really appreciate the fact, I know on many occasions I've walked in to your office, and you were there greeting our residents and shaking hands with people, and I appreciate that too. I know that the councilman sitting next to me has a good question, so I won't steal it. I will let you ask it.
So same question I had asked earlier. I had read something a while back about an increase to homestead exemptions for certain residents. Are you aware of that? And
Yeah.
how would that impact us?
And what we will wind up with is a vote of the public. And you're talking about certain people, you know, first responders or whatever, they're talking about adding another homestead. Teachers. Now, There's all kind of weird rules whenever they do something like this. It causes problems, usually for my office versus the legislature, okay? But you know, this is like while you're employed. So it's not gonna help a guy who's retired or a teacher that retires or any of that. And, you know, I as a politician and as a person, I, of course, love all my first responders, and teachers are, you know, saints for what they deal with, and, you know, that kind of thing. But, you know, every time we give somebody something, someone else pays for it. Always. You guys lose money, you have to change your millage rate. That even if the millage rate affects homesteaders. If you raise your millage rate, they pay more. That's just the way this works. The value is the only thing people are protected from with their caps. Me, they're protected from me only, not you guys, not the county, not the schools. So, you know, when you do these things, everybody needs to think about that. Who's paying for it? We have a senior exemption. Okay, we've had it a long time. So they came up with a 25-year senior. And believe it or not, I stood up there in the county commission chambers and said, it's probably not a good idea. It doesn't make me a bad person, because what I'd rather see you do is give all low-income seniors a little better break, not someone who's lived here 25 years. Any of y'all better than me, besides a couple of people here from the tax collector's office? Most of you hadn't lived here as long as I have. Am I any better than you because of that? You know, you see what I'm saying? It does. That's not even legal. Homestead used to be, you had to live here 5 years. Well, they undid that in a hurry because it violates, you know, rules for our United States of America. You can't base, I'm not better than you because I live here longer than you. So when these things come up, you know, it's something the cities will have to decide, the counties will have to decide, are they going to support this? Now, most people are scared to say anything out loud about it because you don't kick the people that are important to us. You know, especially as a politician, you don't. But you just want to think about who is it going to come, it's coming out of somebody's wallet. And if you're not a person receiving an exemption, you pay for it, period. And we keep adding things because politicians like throwing things out there that sound good. Not picking on anybody, but that's just the way it is. I mean,
Jay, in terms of kicking somebody, could you just give us a 30-second summary of the Value Assessment Board? I think very few of our residents are aware that it exists, and I think it's important that they're aware of it. Would you mind?
yeah, so the property appraiser, you know, being the evil guy that I am, you know, you may have to have a disagreement with me from time to time on your value of your property. Now, normally, we don't have that problem. I like saying I do 87,000 things a year where we could get an argument, a discussion, a question, whatever you want to say. So let's say you come see me and I say your house is worth $200,000, as far as you're concerned it's worth $100,000, your tax bill is too high. You talk to me, I disagree with you. For $15, you can take me to court. That's a pretty good deal. And you will be able to get all the information you need from me, my staff, or my website to do this. And what happens is you show up in front of a magistrate, depending on your situation. There's a lawyer for the exemptions, and there's a value guy for everything else. And you go and make your case, and then I'll make my case. Now, understand this. If I'm sitting across from you in Value Adjustment Board, I'm fairly certain you're fixing to lose. Because, as I said earlier, I'm not the tax guy. I work for the people that are sitting across from me. And I'm there to help. And the Department of Revenue's just watching me to make sure I'm not too nice to you guys, not the other way around, because I'm a politician. But you go to board and make your case, and if the magistrate sees that you've proved your point, you will get an adjustment. In Florida, there's different ways to do it, but in a county our size, you have to have magistrates. And then that finding is brought back to a value adjustment board, which is made up of county commissioners, the school board, a private citizen, and a business citizen. So it's a makeup dictated by state law.
So it's a basic right of every resident of Florida that if they choose to contest the valuation of their, the appraisal of their property, they can appeal to this Value Assessment Board. I just wanted to make that point.
They can do that. You can challenge your port amount. There's all kind of things that you get to do, but I mentioned 87,000. So on a typical year, I'll have a half a dozen people show up at Value Adjustment Board. 87,006. Okay, think about that. It's because of my staff, because of the way we treat people. And look, when you come in and you're telling me about your tax bill and everything, by the time I'm through explaining to you about, well, what Florida law requires of me and showing you the properties that have sold and how we came up with our model, you know, and right now with the values going up, people whisper when I walk by. They don't want me to look at their property. Very few people will let me inside. They call up and say their value's too high. I say, I can have someone out there today at 2 o'clock. They don't want me to see what they have. You know, because normally their house is probably better than what we think it is. But everyone's treated with the same exact view. I mean, we have a model that we run you through. How many square feet? What's your roof made out of? You got a swimming pool, a fireplace. How big's your porch or your garage? All those things are in our model. And it is very reasonable at the end of the day, I think. Very defensible by the rules that I'm underneath. And almost nobody disagrees with me when we're done.
Very
Now,
good.
If I was wrong, I'm your hero anyway, because before you can get back in your car, I've already changed it, because I'm not the tax guy. And if I did a factual error on your property, I'll change it anytime. I don't care about Value Adjustment Board. We're going to make it right. I can even give you back a little money sometimes. I'll look at it, and by law, I can't go back more than 3 years, no matter what the mistake was. So it is on the taxpayer to look at their stuff. I mean, if I said your house was a 4,000 square foot, 2-story home, and you paid taxes on that for 10 years, turns out it's a 1-story house, it's 2,000 square feet. We just made a mistake, had the wrong blueprint. I can help you out for 3 years on something like that. The rest of it, sorry, law does not allow me to do it. And I'll send a correction down to Ms. Johnston, and she will actually send a check back to the taxpayers, but she got to reach out to you guys in the county and whoever else and get that money back. So that's why there's rules and there's limits. Value Adjustment Board, you get that little trim notice that we addressed earlier in Ms. Johnston's thing. Once I mail that, you got 25 days to file a petition to board. If you miss that, nothing to do with me, you're out of luck on that. The next thing you got left is within 60 days of me certifying the final value, you can take me to court. After that, if you get anything, it's because I'm a nice guy, and there's nothing making me do it. I mean, it's very specific so that the money doesn't get pulled back from you guys, because I'm kind of figuring you need your money, right? Y'all got a lot of important things you're doing. The only other thing I had on here was I just mentioned the CRA. You know, that's like this year about using last year's millage rate, about $982,000. It doesn't flow into your general fund. So you get to spend it over there, but it does hamstring you in a bit. And the poor old county, I'm sure they love you guys. I think they lose about $1.5 million from their general fund that you guys get to spend in the CRA. And I'm not even sure I understand what the purpose of all the CRAs are. We got quite a few of them. But, you know, those kind of things affect you. That new construction doesn't count in your rollback. So when you're doing that, that's $1.4 million of free money. Spend it wisely. Very good. Anyway,
Mr. Gardner, thank you very much for your presentation today. We appreciate your coming and helping us.
And if anybody ever wants to sit down for a few minutes and talk about things or questions, my door's always open, and I'll try to be there on time. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Okay, moving along our agenda this morning, we're going to now have a presentation, an overview of fund accounting and revenue restrictions. Take your time.
Find mine in here. So, good morning, Mayor, City Council. Gwen and I are here to present to you the fund accounting and revenue restrictions. I will let Gwen go ahead and get us started with the presentation. Clicker. Thanks.
Good morning, Council and Mayor. We will not go over the timeline in detail. However, as you can see, we were here on April 26th to review the year-to-date budget results with you. Today, we are going to cover fund accounting and revenue restrictions. You will hear from Utility, Public Works, and the Stormwater departments later this morning for their department overviews. And we will come back to Council in June with a presentation on property tax. In the months of July and August, we will hold multiple budget presentations where you will have the opportunity to review the budgets in detail as we move through the process with adoption in September. So fund accounting is a system for segregating financial resources to ensure and demonstrate legal compliance with restrictions and or other special purposes. So what is a fund? The easiest way to explain is that each fund represents its own checkbook. The city has 20 separate funds or checkbooks that are subject to specific regulations and are segregated based on its purpose. The specific purpose is generally tied to a restricted revenues that can only be used for a specific purpose and must be accounted for separately and not used for general operations. So the city has two categories of funds, governmental and proprietary. So the governmental funds are primarily supported by taxes and include the general fund, special revenue funds, and capital project funds. We will cover the restrictions later on in this presentation for each major category. But the easiest way to relate to governmental funds is that correlation between the tax and the usage may not be direct. A good example is the fire department. So the residents don't get charged per call. The ad valorem taxes cover the services that is available to all residents. So the proprietary funds are different, where the user is charged a fee directly related to their services. A good example is the water and wastewater utility, where a resident pays for their individual water usage. Proprietary funds also include internal service funds, where we account for internal operations that benefit both governmental and proprietary funds. A good example of this is IT operations. They service the whole city, and their fees are allocated accordingly. So here's a list of the departments by classification. The governmental includes administration and finance, fire department, the contract with the Flagler County Sheriff's Office for enhanced services, community development, excluding building department, as well as streets maintenance along with parks and recreation. The proprietary includes water and wastewater utility, stormwater management, building permits, information technology enterprise and operations, solid waste, fleet maintenance, and facilities maintenance. So we will now move on to fund balance. Fund balance is simply the excess revenue over expenditures. We are very fortunate here in the city of Palm Coast that we have a solid fund balance policy that has been approved by the City Council. The usage is for emergencies or one-time expenditures, not meant to fund continuous operations. We have policies for the general fund, water and wastewater utility, stormwater, solid waste, disaster reserve fund, and the fleet fund. So Helena will now cover the revenue restrictions portion of this presentation.
So we're going to go ahead and get started with the major or your main special revenue funds. The Streets Improvement Fund is where the expenses are restricted for transportation. This is the fund that pays for the pavement program. Carl Cody reviewed the program with council in great detail at your May 10th workshop. This is where we deposit the state funds received from the 6 cents per gallon of fuel purchased in Flagler County. It is distributed by interlocal agreement, and that interlocal agreement is based on an average of road miles and population, and it is calculated annually in July. The current rate allocated to the city is 72.97%. Also in this fund is a portion of the state revenue sharing that is required by statute to be used for transportation expenses. The state requires 22.64%. We currently are allocating 45% of that revenue, and it really is in an attempt to help fund the pavement deficit in the fund. Another major special revenue fund is the State Road 100 CRA, and the revenues are restricted to development within the CRA. In addition, the city created the American Rescue Act Fund to account for revenues received from the U.S. Department of Treasury and the respective project expenditures that will come with those funds. We will now move on to capital projects. This is our capital projects fund, is where we account for the small county surtax, which is 0.5% of the 7% sales tax collected in Flagler County. It is committed by council to construction and improvement of public facilities. It was adopted by Flagler County ordinance. It's expiring in 2032, and it gets distributed according to the state formula. Currently, and for the next several budget years, this fund has been dedicated to the new Public Works facility. Our other set of capital funds are impact fees. They are restricted for growth-related projects. They can only be used for items that are adding new capacity and cannot be used for existing deficiencies or operations. As you can see, we have the transportation, water, wastewater, recreation, and fire impact fees. These revenues are presented to council as part of the 5-year CIP, as they are restricted for construction and growth.
Elena, could we also just please note that some of those impact fees are also geographically bound to where they can be applied to? So just for residents' understanding, we couldn't collect Parks and Recreation impact fees somewhere in the R section, then use those monies for a park in the B section. Is that true?
So the way our impact fees are not segregated by location, there's very few agreements, and I believe they're related to the transportation impact fees that are for specific areas, but
oh, I'm sorry, additional capacity versus new construction, is that also something that is segregated upon?
okay, so all of these impact fees are only for construction that adds capacity. Yeah. So if we're just doing a rehab on an existing park, that is not adding capacity to that park. Therefore, you cannot use impact fee funds. Now, if you are adding a new park or doing a substantive addition to a currently existing park, that's where you could add impact fees. Understood. But if you have project-related type questions, Carl Cody is the person for those.
Not for the repair or maintenance
No.
or operating expense of an existing facility.
No, and that is by Florida statutes,
Yep.
yes.
Better analogy versus my parks in the two separate areas. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Now we will touch on the enterprise fund restrictions. Our main enterprise funds are the water and wastewater utility, stormwater management, and the building permits fund. Water and wastewater, along with stormwater revenues, are generated and they're used to maintain the system, as well as for debt service requirements, where your building permit revenues are used to maintain the permitting and building division. Now we covered your main restricted funds. Now we're going to talk about your unrestricted funds, and those are used to fund your general fund. So major revenue sources. As you can see, the ad valorem is your first one listed on there. It is the main revenue for the general fund, but we also have other significant revenues that support our services, like the communication services tax is 5.22%, and it is applied to telecommunication, video, and cell phones. Historically, this revenue has remained relatively flat with minor growth. New households are offset by more households canceling landlines and cable bundles, so we saw a reduction in the increase of the revenues. The half-cent Sales tax, that is a portion of the 6% sales tax that is collected in Flagler County, and it comes back to us from the Department of Revenue. We also have the state revenue sharing, and it's a combination of different taxes that get turned over from the state to municipalities.
And may I ask you, on the sales tax, I'm not current on internet sales. Does that include internet sales or does not include internet sales?
That might be a better question for legal.
For legal, okay, thank you.
We'll now take a look at unrestricted revenues that are not currently in use. So these are available revenue sources that the city does not use. These include the electric franchise fee, public service tax, and fire assessment fee. So the electric franchise fee is a franchise agreement between the municipality and the electric provider, in this case, FP&L, essentially for the use of the local government right away. The maximum rate is 6%, and usage or purpose can be determined by city council. The public services tax is a revenue available to municipalities that levy a tax on the purchase of electricity, gas, and water services. The maximum rate is 10%, and usage and purpose can be determined by city council. We also have fire assessment fees. So this is a fee imposed by governments to offset fire protection costs. It cannot be used for emergency services costs. The fee is determined by a rate study for the benefit of the property and approved by council. The assessment would appear as a separate line on the property tax bill. We would like to remind the public where they can find all of our budget information. As in previous years, we have set up the fiscal year 2023 budget link on our website. This is where we're going to post all of our presentations, calendar, and any supporting documentation as we move through the budget process. This completes our presentation, and we'll take questions from council.
Can you just highlight the buy local items? There were, I think, 2 different slides that
Absolutely. So
go back to
our shop local revenues are linked to our fuel tax, which supports our streets improvement fund. And then we have our small county surtax, which is the 0.5% of the 7% sales tax. That supports the construction of new facilities. These are the funds that are being allocated to the public works. And then we have our regular sales tax, which is a portion of the 6% that are also used to support the general fund. Those are all
in big numbers. I hate to call you out on that, but what's the magnitude of that number, just so the public understands how important that is?
It's about $8.5 million.
About $8.5 million bucks. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one last question. I'm sorry. One of the slides referred to a state requirement of a minimum of 22-point-something%. We're at 45. Have we been doubling up like that consistently over the years, or is that a bump recently?
That was recently. I believe 2021 was our first year that we allocated, instead of the 22.76, the 45%. And we did it again for fiscal year 2022. So you have 2 years.
So it's only been in effect for a short time, so we haven't seen the full benefit of overreaching that number for a while to accommodate it. That's for roads, right?
Yes. So it increased the revenue that basically Carl had available for the pavement program, and we also transferred funds from reserves, $550,000, in hopes that the combination of the two would complete his program for the year, but it was still running at a deficit.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments from council at this point?
You've asked the question that I had.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the presentation.
Welcome.
With the significant increase in gas prices, are we projecting a lower percent of money coming back in on that, on the money that we get on the gas surcharge?
So we get our fuel projections from the state, and they did not increase it significantly when they gave us those projections. So I don't know where the actual collections are going to be, but when we looked at our 5-month budget to actual at the revenues that were coming in, we were right on what the state had projected. So the increase in gas prices, we haven't seen those increase in revenues yet.
I would just like to say thank you to Gwen and Helena. I appreciate everything you guys do, and I will note that Suzanne Johnston was absolutely correct that Helena will tell you exactly how to dictate for legality during the budget meetings, and she is the absolute best, so thank you guys.
Thank
And
you.
just 2 more points. With Ms. Johnston's timeline, and she made it very clear to us that we have to observe those dates. I'm sure that you two coordinate very carefully to make sure that we hit all of those dates, and I know you were very persistent in the last budget cycle, so we won't miss any of that opportunity, so I feel very comfortable with that. And I won't ask council to give us a whole explanation of the internet sales tax, but what I'm really digging for here, is there an opportunity for additional revenue to come to the city because of internet sales?
So, effective July 1 of last year, this legislature passed a law requiring businesses that make remote sales to Florida, if the totality of those sales are in excess of $100,000, to remit sales tax to Florida. So that's where we're at now. So those funds would be coming in at this point.
I mean, but is that even projectable? Is there a way, there's no way we can project what that might be, right, at this point?
Right, I don't know that you can, other than it was effective almost a year ago. So I don't know what the revenue difference is now from
very
that.
good.
But maybe some numbers will start coming in. I'm not sure how long it takes to process those.
Our state projections will come in the second portion of July, so we can look at some graphs to see if there's been a significant increase
Good.
versus previous
Very good.
years.
Ladies, thank you very much for your presentation this morning. Very well done.
Thank you.
The next presentation this morning will be our Public Works overview.
All right. Good morning, Mayor, members of council. This morning I have Kevin Brinkley, our Public Works Coordinator, here with me for a look ahead at the Public Works operations as we transition into the budget cycle. So, your Public Works Department, or should I say your award-winning and nationally publicized Public Works Department,
You should.
is responsible for ongoing maintenance of roads and right-of-ways, including paving, mowing, landscaping, litter, traffic, signage, and signals. So we're also charged with maintaining city-owned facilities and acquiring, repairing, and maintaining all city fleet vehicles, including the emergency vehicles and equipment that you see. Our department is broken out into 3 main divisions: your streets maintenance division, facilities management, and fleet management. One note that we did discuss previously that you'll see on this slide under the streets division is that we're currently in a transition period as we bring the solid waste contract oversight into the streets division, with a look at being fully operational when the new contract comes online. So we'll begin that transition. Actually, we already have begun that transition, but over the next year, while we're in the bridge contract agreement and looking forward to the new contract being awarded, that's the point when we will have the oversight of that contract. So as part of our department's 5-year strategic planning process, we developed 5 overarching goals that will guide our efforts. These goals provide us with an azimuth to ensure that our actions are in line with the direction we need to move, and to ensure that we're providing the highest level of service to our citizens each day. While these 5 goals may seem broad in nature, each of them have a number of specific objectives that fall underneath them that we've outlined in that strategic plan to provide us with clear guidance in our actions. So these goals that you see on the screen First and foremost, we want to begin with ensuring that our employees have a safe environment in which to work. From there, we want to enhance the quality of life for all of our residents by implementing proactive programs that improve all city-owned properties within our scope of responsibility. Then we would look to maintain an exceptionally qualified and well-trained staff that carries out that mission and ensure that our activities provide the best result and benefit for our customers, be that internal or external to staff, through strict budgeting processes and fiscal responsibility. So definitely being good stewards of our taxpayer dollars as we look to ensure the quality of our services. And finally, we've talked about this in the past, but we continue to move forward with achieving the status of American Public Works Association accreditation. So this will give us policies and procedures that are peer-reviewed in the public works profession and ensure that our department uses only best practices in their operations each day. In regards to succession planning, we look to the future by planning to build a department structure that provides adequate oversight and management of operations. To do this, we will look to secure manager positions for each division and a clear line of succession that starts at our entry-level positions, moves upward through our individual crew members, our leads, supervisors, and managers, and provide them with a career path that will guide them through that process. In doing so, we've also revamped our career progression roadmaps so that each specialization within our department has a functional learning path from entry level to expert. These roadmaps outline training and certification opportunities that we want to offer our employees at the right developmental times within their career. So it's really giving them the right skills at the right time that bring value back to our operations. From these roadmaps, we build individualized development plans for each employee so that each employee knows where they are within their career progression and what opportunities are available for training and advancement. All of this is supported by our deliberate training program using on-the-job training, in-house development courses, partnering with educational and industrial training providers to ensure that our employees are receiving the most up-to-date information that brings return on investment to our operations. As we lay this out on a timeline moving forward, you can see that we have deliberate milestones within the next few fiscal years. For the FY 21-22 fiscal year and moving into FY 23, we are looking to add a fleet manager position dedicated to right-sizing our fleet and making sure that we're managing those operations using the data that we collect each day to make sure those operations are sustainable. We also look to right-size our landscape maintenance staff, which will add personnel to maintain levels of service to address litter and added detail work, which we know is a focus of our citizens and council. In FY 23-24, we would look to fully bring oversight of the solid waste contract into the Public Works Department. We would also add a facilities manager so that each division has a manager overseeing operations. That rounds out our secession planning efforts. And then one additional staff would be explored to handle the additional administrative workload from bringing solid waste in-house, as well as the increased oversight of our facilities maintenance processes. We would look to have our neighborhood mowing operations rolled into the analysis of the stormwater fee the next time that is looked at. And of course, we would monitor expected levels of service at that time so that if there's a need for staff or a need to move staff to focus on certain areas, we would do so. Moving into FY 24 and 25, that would be the time that I think it would be appropriate to explore the opportunity of a deputy director position. At that point, we would have managers over each division within the department and look to kind of round out the bottom to top succession planning chart for our department. We'd also continue to identify positional needs within the department. Of course, I have smart growth up there because as we continue to add things such as detailed medians throughout the city, More facilities come online, obviously more residents move in, our services change and our service requirements change. So we want to make sure that we're keeping up with our levels of service that our citizens expect from us. And then in the end of 24, going into 25, we would be looking for the new fleet facility to come online, and in 25, 26, look for full operational capability for that facility and staff moving in and operating at 100% in a new facility. We'd also implement the transition plan into the maintenance operations complex. As you'll see in a future slide, that planning process is underway, so it would be a consolidated complex with stormwater, utility, and public works, and a lot of analysis needs to go in to make sure that we move in with fully reviewed processes and procedures so that we're ready to operate and continue services at that point. At this point, I would turn it over to Mr. Brinkley to discuss how we're gathering and utilizing data to drive our decisions.
Thank you, Matt. So the Public Works Department has really made it a priority to let data drive our decision-making process. We've identified some specific key performance indicators that, when they are met, they ensure that we are delivering on the city's mission. I'll take you through 3 of them in a moment, but first know that in every part of our operations, we are asking ourselves, how can we capture data regarding this activity, and how can that be useful to us in the future as far as levels of service and decision-making goes? Our Streets Division supports the sustainable environment and infrastructure priority through their KPI of keeping city mowing on schedule at least 90% of the time. A regular mowing schedule is a key component in maintaining a healthy swale system and a visually appealing city. The mowing activities are tracked using the GIS system, which allows the division to keep an accurate historical record of what has been done and to use that data to inform future decision-making as far as rotation and crew size goes. Our goal in the Facility Management Division is to provide prompt and effective service to our customers, limiting downtime and maintaining a safe operating environment. So our KPIs focus on 2 important sets of data. One is reactive versus proactive work, and the other is our average work order response time. Reactive work relating to system failures and repairs is typically more costly than preventative maintenance, and the chart on the right shows that we are still primarily reactive in nature when it comes to facility work orders. Our goal is to limit the amount of reactive work we do by being aggressive in the proactive work that we do. That entails things like preventative maintenance, performing condition assessments, and scheduling downtime around the city's day-to-day operations. Our goal for work order response time is less than 24 hours from when the work is requested to the time our staff begins working on the solution on site, or at least makes contact to begin the planning process for what to do. The chart on the left shows you that there are many different types of work orders that we respond to, and it's our objective for each of these to average out less than 24 hours. Currently, we are meeting that objective on any work orders deemed critical, and we are working towards meeting that objective on all work orders. Over the next 5 to 10 years, we intend to allocate our resources in a way that shifts us from being a reactive operation to a preventative and eventually a predictively based operation. A predictive operation would utilize data collected by staff in the field to selectively perform preventative maintenance and manage our assets on a planned replacement cycle. Our objective in the Fleet Division is to perform at least 85% of our preventative maintenance services on time, which aligns with the Council's priority of providing safe and reliable services by providing safe and reliable fleet to our employees. Vehicles that aren't maintained regularly run the risk of increased breakdowns and elevated maintenance costs, while timely preventative maintenance helps us to maintain financial strength within the city. The Fleet Division provides also an example of how we're utilizing benchmarking and technology to help us to meet our objectives and to kind of drive our decision making. One would be our technician to asset ratio. We now have 1 technician for every 90 assets that the city owns. Keeping this ratio near the industry standard of 75 to 1 is important because it means that we will have sufficient labor hours available to service our growing fleet and to help keep our preventative maintenance schedule on time. Another would be our Telematics Upgrade. We recently converted our GPS over to a company called Samsara, which provides us real-time feedback on all of our vehicles. And it also does a really great thing, which allows the departments to track their own maintenance schedules alongside the fleet division. So by the division and all the other departments working together, we're going to minimize the likelihood of missed maintenance events. Another one is our fleet management software. So this year we're converting all of our data over into a management software that will really assist us with record keeping and also assist us with identifying vehicles that have upcoming maintenance or even recognizing patterns and trends in maintenance history for assets. So as our fleet continues to grow to meet the needs of our city and the complexity of our assets increases, we're confident that the fleet division will continue to deliver on its promise of providing safe, available, and appropriate equipment for our employees. Now I think Mr. Mansell is going to talk a little bit about some of the economic factors.
Yeah. Thanks, Kevin. So back in March, we heard from economics professor Dr. Lowe. He demonstrated how inflation in the consumer price index has risen by 10% over the past 2 years, and that was at the point of his presentation to council. An acceleration of these economic trends and a strong supply competition for tight supply. So the following slides will show how these effects have been felt across the Public Works Department and across other city operations as a whole. So fuel purchases account for roughly 20% of fleet's annual expenditures and affects every operation and budget within the city. This chart shows us the cost of unleaded fuel has doubled over the past year, with 32% of that increase occurring in the last quarter alone. This was as of the end of first quarter 22. While the city procures fuel in bulk at the prevailing rack rates, we are not immune to increases in price, and we must account for that as we prepare the upcoming budget. Another significant portion of fleet expenditures go toward purchasing consumable goods that go into keeping our equipment in working order. Over the past year, we've experienced an increase of 75% in filters that we use on our heavy equipment, as well as an increase of 17 to 40% on the tires for our vehicles. As you may have noticed in the previous slide, 150% increase in the cost of diesel fuel. Apart from the increase in costs, we are also experiencing significant increases in how long it takes us to get the parts that we need. The same filters used in this chart used to arrive the same day that we would order them. Now they can take up to 2 weeks to be delivered, and that's become the norm for a majority of our consumables across the fleet. Obviously, this slide is just a few samples of those consumables. Across the department, we're seeing unprecedented increases in the cost of chemicals as well. So this includes everything from solvents and lubricants to herbicides, fertilizers used across the city, et cetera. As this chart shows, fertilizer costs and other landscaping chemicals commonly used have risen around 300% this year alone. Other chemicals have seen increases ranging from 75% and up, or 70% and up, meaning that this current market has been felt across every operation. Also, building material price increases have been upwards of 20.4% year over year and have risen around 33% since the start of the pandemic. So recent data from the U.S. Census Bureau shows total domestic construction costs were up by 17.5% year over year from calendar year 20 to 21. The largest spike in this data from year to year since 1970. 2021's costs were also more than 23% higher than pre-pandemic 2019. Companies are blaming this on supply chain issues, inflation, labor shortages, and other issues that have dominated headlines in the past year. But what this means specifically for the city is that we can expect and have already begun to see the effects of these changes in price increases and delays in goods and services related to construction and facilities maintenance operations. I know it's good news for me this morning. So the unemployment rate is low, but inflation is high. So wages have had to increase to attract skilled workers throughout the market. Our service providers have incurred increased costs in maintaining their labor pools and obtaining materials to satisfy their obligations. These costs are being passed on to their customers, specifically the city of Palm Coast. We have found it difficult to remain competitive in the local job market in some areas due to these economic pressures. While we're dependent on several large service contracts for support for our internal operations, we're prioritizing training and developing a workforce that's capable of completing the majority of our services in-house. Once we reach the acceptable levels of internal staff and expertise through training, we plan to transition some of the current services, such as HVAC maintenance and electrical repairs, to city staff. This outsourcing of services increases our overall operational costs and leaves us vulnerable to market fluctuations to maintain continuity in the level of service to our citizens. So that being said, if we insource the right things at the right time with a labor pool that's trained to take it on, we can shelter ourselves from those fluctuations more easily. Now, Mr. Brinkley will discuss our fleet purchase acquisition cycles.
Yeah, so far in the presentation, we've shared with you the economic trends regarding the items that we use daily to keep our city running. And we've also discussed how we're responding to the increased costs associated with the competition for the tight labor supply. But there's one more very important resource that we need to discuss, and that is time. This graphic represents our fleet procurement process. And under normal operating conditions, we're able to respond to the needs of the city and deliver a piece of equipment generally within 10 months. That includes getting a quote from our vendors, getting approval from City Council, submitting the purchase order, waiting on the vehicle to be manufactured to our specifications, and then finally getting it delivered to us. Even for our most complex pieces of equipment, generally fire trucks, we've been able to accomplish this well within a year, traditionally. So what we've experienced over the past year has been remarkable, to say the least. We've managed to maintain our timeline internally, but what we've seen on the manufacturing portion, we've seen increases from 3 to 8 months easily on our small equipment, 4 to 6 months on white fleet, and at least 10 months on heavy equipment, fire apparatus, and Super Duty line of vehicles. So anything F-250 and above, we're seeing an increase of at least 10 months on manufacturing for that. Also tightenings of windows of opportunity to order them. So not only are they saying, hey, we're having a delay in our manufacturing, but they're also saying whenever it's time to order those, you're going to have much less time in order to get your name on the line. What that means is that City Council, for these delays in getting delivery, you'll likely be seeing us again this summer as we request to carry over our purchase orders from fiscal year 22 into fiscal year 23 because we've not been able to take delivery of some of the assets yet. So one bright spot in all this is that we are in a unique position to adapt to this new normal thanks to a few great interlocking components here in the city. First, we're supported by a council and city leadership that recognizes the value of our fleet and the importance of providing safe, reliable equipment to our employees. That's allowed us the flexibility to be proactive in our processes and to do things like place our fleet purchase orders prior to October 1st, which is the beginning of the new fiscal year. Most other municipalities place their orders after October 1st, which means that we are ahead of them in line, and we will receive our equipment before most of our neighbors once production actually starts to pick back up like Dr. Lowe predicted. In addition, we're very fortunate to have a dedicated staff who intimately knows our fleet and is able to keep everything running while finding creative solutions to every new obstacle that they face. Our team has actually begun to place orders proactively whenever they see parts become available and warehouse them on site. A good example of that is the filter that Mr. Mansell referenced earlier, the one that takes 2 weeks for it to be delivered. We used to get, the day that we ordered it. Now our inventory specialist is watching, several different online boards, finding whenever they do become available, grabbing some of them and finding a place to house them on site.
All right, so those are some of the economic factors and data-driven decisions that we've been talking about. We've outlined our secession planning efforts and how we intend to address some of these difficulties through training, as well as some of our sourcing procedures. What I will say is, looking towards the future, we're definitely excited about the maintenance operations complex coming online over the next few years, with the first phase of which will be the fleet maintenance facility. And we're, assessing all operations to make sure that once that comes online that we're ready to move in with, best practice procedures in place to operate that facility, in a top-notch manner. So we also look to educate ourselves through some of our peer organizations, the North America Fleet Administrators, the American Public Works Association, the International Facility Management Association. All of those help us to educate ourselves, make sure that we're keeping pace with the profession, that we're developing our employees correctly, and that we're ready to support our citizens at all times. All right. So council, that completes our presentation, pending your questions.
And just two comments, Matt. First, and you just ended with this, the organizations that you just referenced, does that offer us an introduction or an opportunity to start looking at bulk purchases? In other words, I've seen that we piggyback contracts in certain areas. Can we become more important and a more important buyer for some of these materials if we're able to collaborate with other municipalities? Is that something you look at?
So it definitely is. The piggybacks are an example of that. We look for current things that are in place, such as state contracts, Sourcewell, Florida Sheriff's contract, all of those. Municipalities are all partnering to make sure that those are successful and that we can leverage bulk discounts by using each other's buying power to our advantage. APWA, IFMA, all those other organizations bring us together with vendors, several times throughout the year to kind of talk about what's prevailing in the marketplace. But what I will say is we also look internally to try to be as flexible as possible in our purchasing processes. So Kevin spoke earlier about the filters. That was just one example of we're having difficulty. How can we be more efficient with this? Obviously, a filter doesn't sound too serious, but if you bring a truck in that's vital to, say, stormwater's operations, and you want to do preventative maintenance, and now you've got to take it down for 2 weeks because of an air filter, that's very disruptive to operations. So we want to make sure, maybe we can buy a few more and get a little discount when we do it and keep a few more on the shelf than we normally would have. Mr. Carlos Lopez is our inventory specialist, and he has been very good at looking for flexibilities and ways to improve our processes.
Okay, and the other comment, just quickly, your slide on labor shortages was, for me, very sobering. I have been out in the field visiting your department and others. I've heard the comment. The competition between the private and the public sector is a really big deal. I just want to make sure that I understand the succession planning, which you mentioned, and specifically the career path for every member of your departments. And I'm understanding that's raining down from the city manager's initiative, is an important advantage that we might be able to offer to our employees to help balance that differential between the public and the private compensation differential.
Absolutely, and I will say some of the ways that we're addressing that labor shortage or difficulty in bringing on experienced labor is to kind of build our own from within. The roadmaps offer us an opportunity to kind of reward those employees as they move through either an auto-promote program once they've achieved a certain level of expertise and or a small certification bump if they get a certification that brings value back to the department and the city as a whole.
Sounds like a good plan. You can't get that at Buc-ee's, right?
Yes, sir. Buc-ee's.
Any other comments from City Council at this time?
Thank you for the presentation. I have no other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Good job, Kev.
Next up on the agenda will be the utility overview.
Good morning, Mayor, City Council, residents. Steve Flanagan, here, your utility director. I have with me today Mr. Peter Roussel. He is our newly promoted Deputy Director of Utility. Peter has been with the utility for many years, nearly 30. Most recently, managing the entire water operations areas. In that responsibility, he has water treatment, so the 3 water treatment plants, water distribution, water quality, and metering operations underneath him. It has been my pleasure working with Peter, especially closely these last 3 years. But we are here today to present to you the overview and challenges for fiscal year 22 and 23. So let's get started.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. What I have here on a picture is a conglomeration of different work processes that we perform pretty much on a daily basis. I'd like to point out the middle slide, which is a picture of the inventory room. And that's just a small picture. What we really have is a yard that's full of equipment, different types of pumps. We have pipes that range from a half-inch diameter all the way up to 24 inches in diameter. The other pictures to the left are just regular, normal maintenance that we perform, pulling out pumps and lift stations, performing meter changeouts, whether it's a result of a retirement or just a new meter, checking water quality. We have a compliance program that we do this on a regular basis to ensure that the water quality is within our standards.
So next we're going to talk a little bit about the schedule and our agenda today. First up, we'll talk a little bit about our 22 and 23 budget, then safe and reliable services, data-driven metrics, our succession planning. We'll go into a little bit about cost escalation with chemicals and supplies, and how as well the supply chain status has affected us, and as well as staffing challenges. So next up, safe and reliable services. In order to provide safe and reliable services, the City of Palm Coast Utility performs these type of preventative maintenance measures as an example. Smoke testing of gravity sewer lines. What this is about is basically smoke is injected into a section of the gravity sewer piping within the roadway, and if it actually shows up in the road right away, then there's an issue. Normally those issues can be clean out caps next to the right of way or near the homeowner's home is not secured or is completely been abandoned or vacated. Those issues are then addressed by staff. Next up, we have gravity sewer pipelining and manhole lining. These are efforts, preventative maintenance efforts, where we have found cracks in the piping or cracks in the manholes, and it is extremely important to address those as timely as possible, because as they become a bigger problem, they substantially increase in dollar impact to repair, plus they could potentially cause disruption of service once they reach those kinds of levels. Then talk a little bit about staff installed 566 manhole dishes in some of our more flood-prone areas, if you will. These are basically a dish that goes underneath the manhole rim, and it attempts to keep water out of the gravity sewer system when there is rainwater that actually crests the top of the roadway. The next up is we inspect our gravity sewer system with closed circuit TV. This is part of how we identify those cracks in the piping and work to address them. We do all that work in-house. And then broken and damaged sewer service laterals. Basically, a lateral is just a fancy word for your individual service to your home. And we complete about 100 of those a year. Next up, we have a slide just to kind of give you a general idea of the amount of normal work order work that the wastewater collection area sees. So this is a record of basically through the second quarter, so a 6-month time span. You see here you have work orders issued for over 4,500, work orders closed over 4,400, and then 2,700 cases that come in actually after hours, so not between the hours of 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. You know, our operation, of course, is a 24 hour, 7-day-a-week operation. Next up here, we have some charts and graphs that talk about our installations and tie to basically the growth of the community. So here, what you see in the picture is an installation of one of our PEP tanks going into the ground. And you can see over the course of the last 5 years, we've gone from fiscal year 2018 of 272 of those units being installed up to now we're projecting 966. You know, that's based on installs through the first 6 months of the year. So you can see a pretty good linear line there of installs of PEP tanks. And of course, just keep in mind for every house does not have a PEP tank, so there's many more services being installed than these numbers. These are solely the installations that require a PEP tank installation.
This next slide is very similar to the one that was just on with the PEP tanks, but this is for the meter installations, the water meters, and the same, the trend line based on growth. You can see how it is increasing immensely here. So far for this month of May, we installed 177 meters already, and actually we installed some irrigation, some reclaimed meters altogether. That would be 220 meters so far for May, and we're not even over yet, and we have many already scheduled. The picture you see here is just an example of some of the workers that are actually making the installation. There is a lot that goes into both PEP and meter installations. It has to be carefully placed and graded correctly and properly with select material. And we expect that to continue.
Next up, we'll talk a little bit about some of the positive areas that our staff have worked on to be more efficient and provide better service to our customers. So we start here with the pump station impeller changeouts to the N-style impeller and pump. This is basically a specialized impeller that will cut through things like rags or some of the debris that actually shows up in the wastewater system. So this reduces our labor costs that are caused by that bypass, by the pump binding up with rags and such. And that requires a technician to actually come out, pull the pump, derag the pump, You can see the time involved in doing that operation and the dollars impacting our operation and ultimately the customer, of course. So that N impeller cuts through most drags, so it eliminates that cause of action, if you will. These pumps that go with the new N impeller are also more efficient than the older pumps. So every time we replace out a pump, one of the older pumps with a newer one, most of those newer pumps are also more efficient, so they utilize less energy to run, saving us on electrical costs. The next picture down below you see is replacing capacitor banks with variable frequency drives. Variable frequency drives are technology that allows the pump to run at differing speeds versus a one-speed pump running on the capacitor bank style electrical components. This saves us money, and it also is a safer system. The old capacitor banks basically store energy in the panel, and they can be a safety hazard to our workers. So kind of multiple benefits here.
This here slide is very similar, kind of mirrors what Steve just mentioned on the wastewater, but this is specifically for the well field operation where we decided to change out these old, they're called pressure sustaining valves. We just simply put in an inexpensive check valve that kind of does the same thing, but we also changed out the starting system, the motor starters, to a, like what Steve mentioned, variable frequency drive. So the pump no longer runs at a 100%. We have a set point. We can go out and put that set point in. The motor speed will ramp down based on the gallons per minute flow rate that we're looking for, and it'll sustain that without a pressure sustaining valve. And we don't have to have somebody, an operator, go out to the site where we used to actually make a change with that pressure sustaining valve. That's labor cost. And because it wasn't 100% accurate, if we had to switch wells off and on or change well configuration, that would affect that particular change that was made recently. So we'd have to go back out again and make another change. The VFD takes care of all of that. So with that in mind, and also the pump not running at 100%, we get two cost savings in one operation here. And this is performed in-house. We designed it. As you can see on the bottom picture, those are two of our mechanical techs that are actually building a motor control center. And then the next picture on the right is them actually fitting it all and putting the pieces together. And so far it's been successful in not only saving money, but also operationally successful.
Next up, we'll talk a little bit about our succession planning and the years of our plan. So in fiscal year 22, our current fiscal year, as I noted earlier, we just filled our deputy director position with Mr. Roussel, which was a great plan for us. Next up, we're preparing our wastewater supervisor and other staff for future leadership positioning. We are an aging workforce in the utility, for sure. We added utility capital project position this current fiscal year based on our growth needs. Keeping up with our capital plan is extremely important right now with the amount of growth that we have had. Next, we are also working on our utility rate study. We have issued that study and are in the early stages of getting all the research data to our rate consultant to work through that program. And this will take in several years of planning activity. In fiscal year 23-24, we are proposing a meter foreman position as we grow in our metering area in our replacement of meter program. adding a staff assistant for administrative support, adding a second reuse position in the department. We currently only have one reuse position in our entire department for the many, many customers that we're adding to the system weekly and monthly. Then as well, inventory clerk and a position there to be filled. Our inventory area is very immense, you might say, and the amount of turnover of product that we utilize on a daily, weekly basis keeps him quite busy. Then we will continue to monitor our expected levels of service as we move forward over the future years, keeping in mind, kind of, Mayor, what you said. We're always looking at what new work is coming in. Is the economy changing? How do we flow with that economy? We want to be good wardens of our budget. So in fiscal year 24-25, if we haven't already, then we will add the wastewater manager position to the department. We're going to continue to train existing staff in preparation to replace the aging workforce. And we also will continue to identify positional needs within the department based on that smart growth plan, seeing how the economy continues to move and what our growth patterns are here within the city of Palm Coast. In fiscal 25-26, we'll identify treatment facility operational needs in relationship to that growth pattern, review organizational needs of all divisions. We also continue to support the future joint operational facility plan and its impact on the utility functions and staffing. And it has been a pleasure working with Carl and Matt and trying to make sure that we all plan this facility well and that it meets the future needs of the city of Palm Coast.
Here we have another example of the price increases, and this one's for our chemicals. We have shows water treatment as well as wastewater collection, or wastewater treatment rather. And I won't go through all of them, but if you notice all the way over to the right, the percentages, they're pretty high. We haven't experienced rates, or rather percentages this high throughout the years. Sodium hypochlorite, that's our disinfectant. That's a special grade of bleach, commercial grade that we have to use, and along with all these other chemicals, they are a necessity. The micro C on the wastewater, down at the wastewater treatment, that's designed to help with the production or lower the production of nitrates in the wastewater effluent. Again, supply costs, the first group are just regular typical parts and pieces that are used for their maintenance pretty much on a daily basis. And as you can see, we've got quite a few increases. And these are just examples. We have much more parts and materials that are associated with any of these operations. The second half of the slide is for water distribution, specifically related to water meter installations. There's a few other parts that aren't on there, but that's the majority of the parts for when we install a meter. Staffing challenges. The first thing I would like to say, 10 years ago, the American Water Works Association did a study for water and wastewater operators. And in the study, they concluded that probably 55% of the current day operators at that time, 10 years ago, were in the position that they were going to retire within 10 years. Well, ironically, we're here at that 10-year mark, and we've had some retirees, plant operators that retired recently. So we do have vacant positions based on some retirements, but we are hoping to try to get that staff back up to the right numbers, one of which is we do have a class that we conduct that we partnered throughout the years with FTI, and it's a class that has been approved by the Department of Florida Education, Council of Occupational Education, as well as the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. All those three agencies had to approve all the work that was put in, the lesson plans, the syllabus, everything. They had to approve it all. So we've been quite successful in getting people to come join us throughout the years. So I think I'd like to try to move that ahead again and maybe try it with the wastewater side to help supplement that side. But in any case, staff turnover at the entry and mid-level and plant operated positions have become a serious problem for work production rates. And again, we're addressing that, or we're trying to anyways. When new staff come aboard, there is a learning curve that occurs before they become highly effective field technicians. So when we have high turnover rates, the training value is lost as well. That's just something we just have to live with. We do the best we can and try to live with that. We are having a job fair coming up. We're planning on a job fair for the city, and we probably will contact the high school, maybe the unemployment agency, and try to advertise this a little bit. It's scheduled for June 3rd, so hopefully we can get some people coming in as a result of that event. Recruiting of new staff has become more and more of a challenge based on the ability of the private sector to increase their proposed pay rates at a level quicker than governmental entities can afford to adjust. We've talked about that in the previous presentation. Again, it's something we just have to live with. Currently, the utility have several open positions. On the wastewater side, we have a total of 6 open positions, and I believe that we will fill them in due time.
So that concludes our presentation. We're here for questions. We would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to council today and share some of our challenges, some of the things that we take a lot of pride in to work towards saving costs and performing at a high rate.
Steve, 2 comments from me. First, I think you mentioned that more than half of your work orders or service calls come in after hours. Is there a reason for that?
Well, keep in mind that, work hours are 8 to 5 for most people, but because we're 24/7, a lot of calls come in after hours because homeowners come home from their work day, and that's when they find out they have a problem. Maybe their red light's on their pet tank. Maybe they found some kind of a leak in their yard or something.
I'm just questioning as the retirement capital of the United States. I'm confused by people coming home after hours.
Well, there's a lot of workforce out there too, Mayor.
Okay,
There's
fair
a lot
enough.
of workforce out there. As well, you have weekends where people are all at home on the weekends, and that's when we get a lot of calls.
Because I assume that puts a strain on your operation when those work orders or requests come in after hours.
It does, but and that's one of the things that we have been looking at for the last couple of years. How do we better utilize our skills and not, because we have people on call, 24/7.
Right.
But is there a better method? We've had some people go to 4, because we were given the opportunity to move some people to 4 10-hour days. So we're able to turn people's water on between the hours of 5 and 6 without occurring overtime and those kinds of things. So as we move forward and also grow, we're always assessing that. When does it make sense to maybe have some staff that are permanently working Saturdays and Sundays and later hours? We do have pet maintenance that works beyond normal hours on a daily basis.
Okay, and then one other comment, and perhaps in collaboration with city manager, are you able to, or will you be able to forge a relationship with the school district regarding their classroom to careers or their flagship programs as another way to recruit labor for your departments? Because I'm hearing that as a recurring theme throughout the various departments that we're listening to. I'm just hoping that can become a valuable resource for the future.
We met with the assistant city manager, and it is our plan to work closely with the school district and try and implement some kind of a program for the students to become potential city employees.
Great, thank you. Questions from City Council at this time?
I have none. Thank you for being here today.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you all.
Carl, you have the grand finale.
Well, good morning. I have here with me today Donald Schrager. He's Operations Manager in the Stormwater Department, and we will be going through our department's overview and challenges and where we're headed. You'll hear a lot of the same things you just heard in the previous two messages, but we'll get going. Just to give a brief overview of the department itself, we're kind of broken off into 4 divisions. We have the Stormwater Division, which, you know, they obviously deal with the rehab and renewal of the stormwater system. They do system-wide modeling, drainage improvements, capital improvements. We have the Utility Division that works on water and wastewater capacity analysis, you know, again, more system modeling, growth, dealing with the needs of the utility infrastructure, and managing the capital improvement projects. Our Park and Facilities, again, are working on the rehab and renewal of all our existing facilities, looking at expansion and dealing with growth and level of service, as well as, you know, overseeing all the associated capital improvement projects that go along with those. And then our Transportation Division, which, you know, oversees the continuous streetlight program, safety improvement projects, you know, various capital improvement projects for capacity enhancements, a pavement management program, and so forth. These are just some highlights of some of the items. There's a lot more that they are involved with. But kind of just to give you an overview, there's really 4 areas of focus within the department. And just to identify some of the goals that really kind of try and steer the department, you know, we look to ensure and enhance the quality of life for all our residents by adding park facilities and transportation elements to meet the demands of a growing community. So, you know, again, that's maintaining our current quality of life by having to enhance and add to that as we grow. We collaborate with various departments to ensure stormwater, utility, transportation, park, and facilities are functioning efficiently and effectively per the funding available. So, you know, our department, we work hand in hand with pretty much every department in the city on operational issues and growth needs. To develop projects and programs to provide all residents with a well-maintained and functioning stormwater system. You know, the stormwater system is a primary asset. It's very critical infrastructure that needs to be well-maintained and functioning to prevent any flooding of homes. Ensure that our activities provide the best result and benefits for our customers through strict budgeting processes and fiscal responsibility. And then provide accurate and timely information to residents through active citizen engagement activities. And we'll touch upon a couple of those items as we move through the slides. So our engineering folks, you know, obviously one of the big components is the capital improvement program. You know, on the right is our CIP dashboard, and that directly correlates to our citizen engagement, where we're trying to keep all our citizens abreast as to what's going on in the city, get more information on those projects, some of that emergency contact information, and just they know what's happening out there, what's in the works, because sometimes it's just design, it's not actually construction yet. So we obviously manage the projects. There is some in-house design. We do the master planning, long-range planning. You know, these projects don't happen overnight. You know, sometimes these take 10 years or more to put into place from initial fruition. So we do technical reviews on new development and permits, and then operation oversight, of those various components: stormwater, utility, traffic modeling, traffic signal timing. So a lot of assistance with, keeping things functioning, working hand in hand with those other departments. So the capital improvement side is a major animal in the department. You can see there's a lot of projects and a lot of dollars. Takes a lot of staff oversight. Even small projects are very complex, take a lot of time to oversee and manage. And obviously some of the challenges we face on the capital improvement side is obviously cost escalation. This is from an engineering news report, which is what we use for our annual impact fee adjustments. And this is a national average. We'll touch upon in future slides some specific increases we've seen, but you can see their single and double digit cost increases just year over year from 1 year ago. So just to touch upon, obviously some challenges that we're facing are funding shortfalls. You had a single presentation just to touch upon the pavement management program, just a couple weeks back. Our increased cost to construct new assets and maintaining existing, citizen requests for unfunded items, the saltwater canal maintenance, pedestrian accommodation on residential collector on roadways, and that's just some, there's more as well. Infrastructure needs, there's increase in quantity of projects to address aging infrastructure and regulatory requirements. So, as the city grew over the past 15 years, we've added parks, we've added components, and those need upkeep, those need rehab. This building here is already 6 years old now, so at some point it's going to need some of those major rehabilitation components, whether it's a roof or the carpeting or all those things add up. Increase in quantity of projects due to growth. Increase in projects requires additional funding and staff. And then succession planning, limited depth and number of staff in various engineering divisions. We ran into this, item in the past when our traffic engineer left. It took us, left the gap. We were using consultants to get work done. That's a learning curve to understand operational needs of the city. We didn't have those backup staff members under that person to fill in when we had a loss of staff or a person that retired. So we've been working on those. We've added a few staff members in that area, but this is something moving forward that we need to factor in and plan for.
Thank you, Carl. I'm going to walk you through the two other sides of stormwater, operations and maintenance, or the boots on the ground type. From the operations side, my side, I have a very small staff. I have 4 field people. These are the guys that do face-to-face interaction with contractors and residents, whether it's an inspection or whether it's a work order that came through from a resident. And these guys always continue to impress me at the level of the amount of work they produce is just incredible. Next slide, please. As you can see, there's been a drastic upswing in the level of inspections that they do. The jump in 2021 was from some additional inspections that we were able to put in place for stormwater issues and regulations. But 4 guys do 14,000 permit inspections a year. Along with that come permit reviews. Every new home construction that puts in a permit, my guys review the site plan to make sure it's compliant as well. And then there's the work order side of it. We do have a backlog. Between new and open cases, that number is almost the same, so as fast as we're closing them, they're opening up again. This presents a challenge because some of these can be done very quickly. I was talking to one of my staff this morning. He went out to talk to a resident. He was there for almost an hour. Trying to do that interaction and make sure that their question is answered completely, and when they leave, they don't call. They don't have the need to call back, or they feel that they've been taken care of. Our KPI for operations, is to answer work orders in an appropriate time frame. In this case, it's set for 3 weeks. We are already aware that we will not be able to meet this with current resources that we have. At the graph next to it, out of the 776, 59% of them are older than the 3-week time period. And as fast as we close them, they open up again, so 41% of them are less than 3 weeks. Challenges, same challenges you've heard throughout today. Workload, construction is up, and now we're looking at taking on more work from right-of-way permitting with Metronet and other providers coming in and trying to provide fiber throughout the city. And with Palm Coast Connect, people are more connected. We get further response, we get more responses. We're struggling to just maintain now, and I keep reminding people, we haven't gotten to the rainy season yet. You can see spikes in our levels of work orders that come in every time it rains. Infrastructure needs, we support maintenance, and we have some infrastructure responsibilities of our own that we struggle to do with the small staff. We get as much done as we can, but we still do struggle. And looking forward, we have regulatory requirements that are coming on now, and in the future we'll have MS4 requirements as well. I don't have as many because of the small staff, but I do have challenges with staffing. I've had a few leave for better opportunities elsewhere. All left on good terms, just better opportunities. I'm fortunate enough, I've actually managed to pull from people from our maintenance side, which gives some of the maintenance people an opportunity for growth. Doesn't help Andy out with losing his staff, then he has to get new ones. But yeah, the fact that we can take from our own staff and give them a chance to move up within the organization has made a few people happy. From the maintenance side, I believe everybody's familiar with our system. It's massive, and it is citywide. There isn't really a corner of the city that isn't affected by it. So it takes a small army of people and equipment to maintain it. When you talk about swale maintenance, the maintenance side of it is actually catching up. We had a drastic increase many years ago, and it's been a struggle to catch ahead, but with the current resources, they are actually catching up. Slowly, it will take some more time. We do have a map. We map out our maintenance, and you can actually see it on the map, how much they actually produce, and it's available to the public. Anybody can go online and see it. And you can actually see that, especially this next coming year, we'll start making more and more progress as we start closing out some of this backlog. Maintenance side, their level of service is to basically complete more work orders than we take in. They are actually doing it, but as I said, it's going to take time to get it actually flipped around where we're keeping up all the time and not having a backlog. Similar challenges that you've heard from everybody else. Material costs have gone up. Some drastically. There's a slide coming up that will show you some of our real world costs that have gone up. And supply chain. We have projects that go engineering supplies us with a design, then we have to order materials, and we just have to wait for some of these materials to show up so we can actually do the work. Fuel costs. With the help of the council, we've gotten the right equipment to do the job we need to do, but all of it works on fuel, so those costs have gone up. You've heard Mr. Mansell talk about the rise in chemical costs. Well, we use chemicals to treat our canals and our ditches. Those costs have gone up quite a bit. Something as simple as sod. Sod doesn't seem like a lot, very expensive commodity, but when it goes up a little bit, if they do 30 miles of swale a year or more, it's basically 30 miles long by 15 feet wide. It's a lot of sod. So even a small increase ends up being a lot of money. And staffing, other than myself stealing Andy's people from him, They have had a high turnover from people just having better financial opportunities somewhere else. The vast majority of our staff leaves on very good terms, but they have opportunities somewhere else. Some of our real world costs, concrete up 17%. One of the most drastic increases is in pipe, metal pipe, up 121%. And even trying to go with plastic pipe, even plastic pipe is up over 61%.
So, yeah, we touched upon succession planning slightly during the presentation, and Don indicated, we do work on those auto-promote categories, cross-training with staff members so we can utilize them on area crews, or train them on other specialized pieces of equipment so we have backup personnel, adding some staff where we don't have that depth. So we do work on this across the entire department, and how to elevate and promote staff from within. And then our kind of working on that succession planning and kind of looking towards the future, in the upcoming year, we have in the engineering side some various staff members that are put into place, one either to get ready to deal with some turnover of staff or to provide those backup staff members, as well as to provide some items that may be associated with stormwater rate study. That is one that is being analyzed right now. We're ready to kick off that rate study with a consultant and to look at where we stand today with our enhanced stormwater program and how that's going to work moving forward now that we've implemented that for 4 years, and we've got some more true numbers and projects and items identified to move forward. And then looking forward over the next, rest of those 5 years, we looking to address so adding positions either for regulatory needs or succession, workload, efficiency, or level of service items. Looking to explore adding staff in lieu of utilizing consultants. We typically look at that on an annual basis, whether it may be for concrete or asphalt or maintenance, where we're paying crews to do that. At some point in time, even our canal spring, there's certain instances when you want to utilize private industry to do that, or when bringing in-house makes sense. So those are potential items that we bring in, as well as anything that may be tied to the rate study to bring us in line to be prepared for the future moving forward. And that ends what we have here. We're a department, I think, currently of 66 staff members, and these are just some highlights of photos of various projects and maintenance items that the staff performs.
Just a quick question, Carl. You said despite limited staff, you're beginning to catch up on, was it swales in particular or the work orders?
Swales in particular, that was what the slide was about.
And
part of that was we were able to add a couple staff members this year where we were swale specialists, so they're going out ahead dealing with the locates, laying out the grade. They're doing a lot of the prep work, so we've analyzed that and how can we do this a little more efficiently so we can get a little bit more work done. But some of that happens to do with, you can see that there was a spike back in, a few years ago when we had those hurricanes pass through. There was a lot of work orders that got put in the system. So we have a lot of work orders that, came in 3 years ago that are still on the books that we're trying to catch up with.
Okay, so that explains the 3-week closure. You've got a significant percentage of cases that require 3+ weeks.
No, I think we're targeting two different things. In the maintenance side, my guys go out and do the original contact with the resident. And if maintenance is required, it gets put on the map, they get. So then maintenance has to close out their work orders. Those work orders are getting caught up on. They had a backlog and they are slowly catching up on that. From my end of it, the original work orders coming in were kind of evening out at this point with it being dry weather, and 3 weeks right at the moment, we're not meeting on a
Okay,
regular. on a
and
regular
my question really is, as a KPI, historically, are we exceeding what it's been in the past with 3 weeks, or is 3 weeks is what it's been over the years?
I don't think there was ever really a time set, like a performance measure set for
Yeah, it's a hard one to do because when we get those big rain events, we may get hundreds of work orders. So there's times of the years during the drier time of the year, yes, 3 weeks is normal. When we get a major event or a major storm, 3 weeks is never going to happen.
But we haven't
So-
experienced a bump up in that. That 3 weeks is not a huge increase all of a sudden.
No, actually, it sets a time frame that I'm not exactly.
Okay.
We do try to get to them as quickly as possible, but.
But the dilemma we have with those work orders is that's the same staff that are performing these inspections that are required to be done same day, they're scheduled. So those have a 24-hour turnaround, so basically if the inspections get done, then they go work on handle some work orders. So the growth in the permit activity is not letting us meet our 3-week time frame, so, because that has a higher priority.
Understood.
On the work.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Gentlemen, any additional questions or comments?
Thank you.
Just one for clarification. So the stormwater maintenance plan is working. We went from 651 work orders in 2018 to 44 in 2022. Is that correct?
I didn't check the numbers.
Is that what I saw there? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the incoming one. We still have a backlog, and it's the backlog that they're working through.
Okay, but it sounds like the plan is working and the data shows it.
It is, data's showing it, and just need patience. We are getting there.
Thank you. Thank you for all your hard work.
Councilman?
Thank you.
No, thank you for the continued effort, the accelerated swale maintenance program. It's been, you guys have totally crushed it since my experience started on this council. You guys have been tremendous, not only in the performance, but also the data you're collecting and being able to analyze how well we are performing and improving. And I appreciate that because it makes our jobs much easier sitting up here seeing numbers trend in the correct direction. So thank you.
Appreciate that.
Gentlemen, thank you for your presentation. Very thorough. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is final public participation for today's meeting. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment at this time? Seeing none, I'll close public. Yes, sir. Sorry. Take your time.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council. Sorry, Gene Dowd, Palm Coast resident. I just want to point out, last Thursday, I think there was a meeting at the community building, and Carl and maybe Matt was there about sidewalks and streets. And it was only an hour meeting, hour and 10 minutes, and I watched it, and at the end, the citizens had nothing but good things to say about Carl and Matt. They weren't happy about traffic, they weren't happy about sidewalks, but what a professional staff. They got up and they thanked them. I don't know how many meetings they had with them. Most of them were from Cimarron and Comanche. But today, what a presentation by everyone, and it's a learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene.
Sooner or later, we'll get a smile out of our city manager for that. All right, with that, if there are no other members of the public that would like to make comment at this time, I will close public participation and open up to the dais. Are there any city council members that would like to make final comment today?
Yes, I would,
Please.
and this is something for perhaps our next business meeting, but I know the councilman sitting next to me has graciously been using up a lot of vacation time to be at these meetings, and I would just like to get a consensus, or perhaps bring it up at the next business meeting, that perhaps we consider, at least until November, shifting our business meetings, not our workshops or our budget, but our business meetings to the evening hours, and give him a little vacation relief. So just something I want to toss out there for you folks to consider. But I know he's been, sacrificing his vacation time, which takes away from family and things. So I think we could help him a little bit.
If we work on consensus and then we give it to the city manager because staff is a part of it. Any objection?
No, did you mean move our workshops to the 6 o'clock hour or just both business meetings?
Well, I mean, I'd love to move it all, but I don't know if that's practical because of, our workshops, and having staff here, but I would at least think we could move one of the business meetings and have the two business meetings in the evening.
Yeah.
It also makes it easier for residents who work to show up here at council.
Yep. Councilman, same?
I'm good with that as long as it doesn't interrupt staff's day. I don't
So,
want them to change.
Councilman,
things on my-
could I ask you to have your meeting with city manager and work through the details of staff's availability? I have no.
I don't either, but I'm just.
flexible.
That's why I'm bringing this up
Okay.
now, so we can.
City manager, does that give you, okay, you can have that conversation? Very good, thank you. Anyone else?
Just one comment, school is out on Thursday, it's a half day, so to our community, our citizens, there may be some students, young kids riding bikes in the road or out playing sports, so please be careful and watch out for them. I hope all of our students have a great, happy and safe summer.
What does the sheriff tell us, that the best sheriff is the parent who's the sheriff at home?
Yeah.
That is
All right,
correct.
good.
Nope, I have nothing. Thank you.
So, council, any final comments today?
I have none.
Thank you. And city manager?
I have none. Thank you, Mayor.
Very good. With that, I would ask for a motion to
I'll make
adjourn.
it.
I have a motion and a second. Thank you. We're adjourned.